Good morning, everybody. My name is David Jaffe. I'm the co-director of Successful Business Advisors. We'd like to welcome you to today's webinar with Ryll Burgin-Doyle, who's going to speak to us today. And we thank you for all coming to today's session. And after our first two sessions, we're quite excited about the acceptance of our webinar series, and we're looking forward to today's session very much. Laurent?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Laurent Mas, co-founder of Successful Business Advisor, and today I'm very, very pleased to introduce Ryll Burgin-Doyle. That is very close to my heart, and that is someone, when I met her the first time, she was so inspirational to me. So Ryll has been an extraordinary entrepreneur with 29 years of growing her own businesses and as well businesses of others, helping entrepreneurs to grow and to thrive. Between Australia to New Zealand, USA, Asia, and United Kingdom, she literally almost worked with every kind of businesses, and from startup to SME, 400 million and $1 billion company. She created as well non-for-profit organization, Step Up Foundation, which has been amazing. She created as well a big franchisor company, and she has been a Telstra Businesswoman of the Year finalist for smart companies. So she's been an amazing entrepreneur and helping entrepreneurs. As well with her husband, they are the promoter of Money and Youth, an extraordinary program that I really encourage you to go. And this morning, Ryll gonna go through strategy and the 3 keys to thriving in turbulent times. Ryll?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, you two. You're doing a wonderful job. Excellent. Thank you for having me here, and welcome everybody. I'm just going to share my screen and we can get stuck into it. My intention today is really to focus on talking about the 3 keys to thriving. Since COVID all began, we've had some 2,300, just over 2,300 and a bit people register for the webinar we've been leading for the public to support people. So I just wanted to share some of the really relevant and salient points out of that I'm passionate about. So clearly we are in turbulent times, and with the JobKeeper, JobSeeker and the mortgage holidays coming off in September, October, I think there's more to come. But how we all operate in this point, we have a pretty big choice, but there has been some crazy stuff going on. Obviously, we've all experienced things that no one on the planet has experienced before in living memory. So it has been a very strange time. But really today I want it to be about you and what you're up to, and to make sure that you are positioned really powerfully in the next 12 to 24 months, because the next 12 to 24 months are going to be absolutely critical to anyone in business, in my view. So really today is about you and giving you some strategies and ideas and things to think about, even just to get the mind working in a different way, to give you access to different outcomes is really my intention. I'm keen to give you some clarity and certainty and strategy and connection, and maybe even a little bit of comfort as we build this new future ahead for each of us. So for me, I've been asking those few thousand people that I've been talking to in the last few months about, are they seeing this period that we find ourselves in and now coming out of the serious restrictions and trying to go back to what's now a new normal, are they seeing this as an opportunity, as a challenge, or as the end of the world as we know it? And most people, thankfully and rightfully, I think, are seeing it as a temporary challenge, but a massive opportunity. So really wanting to make sure that you turn this into a huge opportunity for you and your business. So this is a quote from a genius that lived in the 20th century that Laurent is very familiar with, named Buckminster Fuller. He was an inventor, an architect, a mathematician, engineer, designer, prolific author, historian, humanitarian. And He says we are called to be architects of the future, not its victims. And I wholeheartedly believe that, and I think it's incredibly true for right now. So we are called to be architects of the future, not its victims. So for those of you who don't know me, as Laurent said and David said, my name is Ryll Burgin-Doyle. I'm here to add as much value as I can. And from my perspective, we have a choice point, and we have had in these last 12 or 16 weeks or so. I've certainly seen in the businesses that we work with, and even in our own businesses, the really people falling into several different categories. One category being let's hide out and wait and see. One category being kind of running around like a chook with their head cut off because they don't know what to do next. And then those that are choosing to thrive and come out of this thriving. And that's really who I think you are. And certainly Laurent and David are making sure that anyone around them, as we are, is thriving. So really, I'm going to share as much as I can out of the strategies I've used over the last 29 years to grow all sorts of businesses, as Laurent said, and also some strategies and principles that come from the incredible experience that Laurent mentioned called Money and You. And these are some of our graduates: Tony Robbins, Kiyosaki, and Susan Barton, who's got an amazing organization in Victoria, for some of you based in Victoria, as Laurent and David are. Lighthouse, that's a Money New grad, and that foundation was created inside the Money New community. Jack Camfield. I won't go into all of these quotes for the interest of time, but you can see there's some very high caliber participants. Our graduates, our alumni is amazing. So I'm going to share as much as I can from Money and You to forward your game in the next 12 to 24 months, as I said, because I think there's real opportunity in the business world at this time. So look, some of you would have seen this floating around the internet. When written in Chinese, the word crisis is composed of two characters. One represents danger, the other represents opportunity. That's actually incorrect. As a professor of linguistics has confirmed that's incorrect. The second symbol actually means that this is a crucial point, absolutely crucial point in time when something begins or changes. That's actually what that second symbol means. And I think we can all agree that something has begun, things are definitely changing, and this is a crucial point for anyone in business. How we operate, how we have operated in the last 16 weeks, how we are going to operate in the next 12 to 24 months is absolutely critical to where you'll be positioned. And the good news, I think, is that business is here to stay. Why do I say that? Well, because it's made it through every other crisis on the planet. It will continue to do that. It's what we do. So business is here to stay. Business will bounce back. Business will grow. Where will you be when it does? So that's what I'm really interested in. Where will you be where it does? And I'm also keen to have you capture as much of the new money that's coming into the market as possible. There's obviously just billions of dollars been thrown at supporting the economies of Australia by state and federal. But there's literally trillions of that kind of activity going on all over the world through the world economies, and new money being printed. So there's a Money and You graduate and a venture capitalist that's based out of LA named Maria Simone, and she very famously came up with a quote called "Money has not left the planet" during the GFC. She came up with that, and she's been saying that again to remind people, money has not left the planet. And in fact, there's more money coming into the world economy than ever before, with all the governments printing, literally printing presses are printing new money at the moment. Now, I'm not going to talk about, well, what does that mean down the track, etc. What I'm really interested in is making sure that you and your family and your businesses capture some of what's going to be coming into the market and already is coming into the market. And, you know, we just need to be mindful of our own scarcity, blind spots and assumptions. And that's certainly work we do at a Money and You program, where we clear out any of those things that are limiting beliefs and limiting programming or limiting patterns around success, business, entrepreneurship and wealth. And I've noticed a lot of people making assumptions about where everyone in the market is right now, versus that's, you know, that i.e. that nobody has any money. Well, it's absolutely not true. People are spending, and they're actually spending on high ticket items right through to low ticket items in every kind of industry you can think of. So there are opportunities out there, and our own scarcity and beliefs around that, and our own blind spots when it comes to wealth and business, and certain assumptions could be limiting us. So just want to flag that as something that needs to be worked on. So let's get into the 3 keys to thriving in turbulent times. So number 1 is perspective. Number 1 from my point of view is perspective. I'll say more about that in a second. Number 2 is strategy, and this is my personal passion. I'm most known as a strategist. If I'm known for anything, it would be strategy. And then number 3, action. So perspective, strategy, and action. I'm going to go through them, and then you can let me know. By the way, feel free to pop in the chat. How are you seeing where we are right now? How are you seeing where we find ourselves? Are you seeing it as a temporary challenge we have to get through? Are you seeing it as an opportunity, or are you seeing it as the end of the world as we know it? I'm pretty sure anyone on something like this is not seeing it as that, but just pop in the chat. How are you seeing right now? Is it an opportunity, a temporary challenge? How are you relating to where we find ourselves today? So go ahead and pop that in the chat. Opportunity, challenge, or the end of the world as we know it. Go ahead and do that. So before I get into those 3, thank you, those 3 keys to thriving in turbulent times, I just want to make one point. That is that the laws of business are immutable. What I mean by that is, when I first started working on other people's businesses and growing other people's businesses, I was 21. And then the first business I ever had when I was 23, I started 6 months after I did Money in You with $1,100 to my name. I was still working with other people on their businesses as part of that. And I used to get asked the question all the time, well, have you ever worked with XYZ type business? And at 21 and 22 and 23 years of age, of course, my answer was probably, no, I haven't, because I just didn't have that depth of experience at that time. But the one thing I would say to people, and I still say to people today, is it actually, in a way, doesn't matter what your business is, because the laws of business are immutable. Yes, we have to pay attention to the details that are relevant for your industry, but fundamentally, we all have a product or service. We all have to add value in that capacity. We have to market it, we have to sell it, we have to deliver it, and we have to get paid for it. We have to have that happen over and over and over again. So really, what I'm inviting you to do is be looking for, how can you apply what I'm talking about? Not, I'm going to give you some examples, and I want you to think about, well, how could I adjust that example to my business? Because the laws of business are immutable, as I said. We all have to have a product or service. We have to market it. We have to sell it. We have to deliver it. We have to fund it, get paid for it. So I invite you to take on pulling towards you any of the ideas we talk about versus thinking, well, that doesn't apply to me. How could whatever we talk about apply to you? So the first key, what is your perspective? So what I mean by that is, I was one of these people that at the beginning of COVID, for example, at the beginning of late 2019 and early 2020, I was one of these people that was like, yes, this is going to be the decade that delivers. It's fantastic. It's a new decade. How exciting. Woo-hoo. It's going to be brilliant. And I geared everything up around that. We were very committed that all of our clients, all of our community, all of our businesses, all of our business partners, because we have multiple enterprises, everybody was, this was the decade it was going to deliver for everybody that we were, our clients, our community, etc. And then of course COVID hit, and I was like, what? That's not supposed to happen. And bushfires, then COVID, it's just been a crazy start to the year, obviously, as we've all experienced. So, but really, as I started working with people, because we went straight out to our community to support them, and one of the things I noticed was that it's absolutely critical for thriving in turbulent times like these, or any time in my view, is to have a perspective, a longer term perspective. So yes, we have to deal with our short-term things that we have to address right now, and have been addressing over these last many weeks, and will continue to be addressing for the balance of this year at least, I would say. There are short-term things we have to address, but we have to remember that business is a long game. Business is a marathon, not a sprint. The stock market is a long game. This is a long game. So what is your perspective means, where are you looking? Where is your attention? Is it right here, right now in the short-term stuff you've got to handle? Or are you keeping your eye on the prize called, where do we want to be in 2030? You have to be, in my view, you have to be looking at, where do we want to be in 2030? What do I want my business to be like? What do I want it to be delivering my family and I in terms of profits? What do I want it to be delivering in terms of lifestyle, in terms of legacy and contribution? What do I want my business to look like in 2030? And then coming from that place, what do we have to do right now in this acute phase? Like I'm saying, there's been the acute phase, the COVID crisis phase. Now there's this strange new normal where nothing's fully normal, but we're kind of creating some new normal. Then I believe there'll be and in that new normal, there'll be some tough stuff that goes on. Then there'll be recovery, and then there'll be growth. Those are the 4 phases that I believe will take place. And whilst we've had to handle the acute phase, now we're having to handle this strange new normal that, as I said, is probably going to have some pretty tough patches in it. That's all short-term stuff. So if you think about the next 12 months or 2020 as a 12-month period, then we've got 9 years. Or even if you said, look, this thing is going to impact all of us for 12 to 24 months, we've got 2 years, 12 to 24 months of dealing with what we have to deal with right now. Everyone's shifting their business models, changing what they do, how they do it to better suit what's going on in the market right now. And we'll continue to do that, I think, as the market adjusts. But that's where we need to we do have to make those short-term acute actions. But you have to be doing that, in my view, inside your much longer perspective of where do I want to end up in 2030, because the decisions you're making in the next 12 to 24 months will have a massive impact on where you end up positioned. So you have to have that long-term perspective in sight as you're making those short-term decisions in this acute phase, the new normal, 12 months, 24 months, because if you don't, what I find happens is that you'll sidestep, you'll make errors, and they could be costly, and you'll lose a lot of time and a lot of money in the process. If you lose sight of that big picture, you'll make mistakes in the short-term picture. And the other thing is, it's so much more empowering for us as entrepreneurs to go, you know what, this is a long game. We have a decade. Let's just focus on the decade, let alone 20 years or 25 years. Let's just focus on this decade. And if we keep our eye on the prize for 2030, knowing that business will bounce back, it will, it always has, and business will grow, things will shift. Knowing that, where do we want to be, and what do we have to do now to make sure we come out of this really well positioned to continue on that track to achieve those 2030 goals while we handle what we have to handle right now. So that perspective, I think, is absolutely critical, not just from a outcomes point of view, but also from keeping ourselves as leaders, as entrepreneurs, keeping ourselves inspired and committed to the future we're creating. Remembering what Bucky said is we are the architects of that future, not its victims. So what is the future you are creating? And what do we need to be doing short term to make sure that still happens? So, and it's completely possible. You know, my own experience has been that there's been things that I've created during this phase that are fundamentally game changers for where we'll be in 2030 that would not have happened. And certainly, well, it probably would have happened, but they wouldn't have happened at the rate they've happened, thanks to this process. So, but you've got to have your eye on that big picture prize while you handle the small picture stuff. That has to be done, but do it in that context. The second thing is strategy. Obviously, strategy is something I'm incredibly passionate about. I think without strategy, you just get more of the same and more of the same, which is not empowering again for us as leaders and entrepreneurs and business owners. So what's your strategy? Let's talk about this, because it is a word that I think is very misused or misunderstood in the market, especially in the SME market. So strategy, according to Oxford, is a plan of action designed to achieve a long-term or overall aim. Okay, Wikipedia says this one: strategy is a high-level plan to achieve one or more goals under conditions of uncertainty. Look, being in business often sees us facing conditions of uncertainty and yet pushing hard to achieve our goals. What we've just gone through is a much heightened level of uncertainty. But fundamentally, we're always doing businesses in uncertainty. That's just part of being an entrepreneur. That's why we're creative problem solvers. So strategy, a high-level plan to achieve one or more goals under conditions of uncertainty. So strategy is a method or plan chosen to bring about a desired future. What future? Well, your desired future. What do you want? What do you want this business to deliver? And a strategy describes how the ends, your goals, will be achieved by the means, your resources. So strategy is about building the best, fastest, most cost-effective, profitable map for getting from A, where you are now, to B, where you want to be in a given time frame, in reality. Not like some pie in the sky, but in reality. And one of the things that Money in You does is Money in You allows for us to accelerate the ability to produce that end result. But strategy is about really building the most cost-effective map, cost-effective, profit, all of it, the smartest really plan, roadmap to get from A where you are now to B where you want to be. And if you want exponential results, if you really want to shift your results, you will find them in doing the thinking and strategic work first. That is absolutely where we need to look as business owners and entrepreneurs. So let's talk more about that. So creating a clear strategy brings results. I'll give you some examples of why strategy is so important. So say, for example, a few years ago, I worked with a young man who had a business that was doing about $5 million in gross revenue per year. And we spent 2 days on my back deck, actually in this house. I've just moved back into a house that I've owned for a very long time because we're going to renovate it. But in this house on our back deck, I did a 2-day strategy intensive with this gentleman. And we mapped a plan to get him from a $5 million per annum business to a $65 million business in 10 years. And in fact, the strategy was so strong and so clear that he was able to achieve that 65 million in 8 years and hit 100 million in gross revenues in 10 years. Another example, I did a strategy intensive, what I call a strategy intensive, which is a 2-day process that I take people through. And I did another one where the guy was doing about $1 million a year. We did a plan to get him to a $40 million business in 5 years when he got there in 3. Another couple doing about $2 million, had a lot of breakdowns going on in their business. They were behind in pretty much every functional area of the business, was running behind and not running well. They hadn't paid themselves properly for years. One of the premises in Money in You that we talk about is you must pay yourself first, no matter how small. Psychologically, it's incredibly important, and financially, it's incredibly important. So we did a strategy intensive with those guys and came up with a very clear focus for their business. They grew within 6 months. They'd added $400,000 in revenue. Within 3 months, they were paying themselves more than they paid themselves in the prior 3 years. They had their first holiday within about 6 or 7 months. And they've continued to grow and grow, and they're in a small regional country town. So strategy makes a difference no matter where you are geographically, no matter what business you're in. Then some other examples during COVID, we worked with one of our Money in You graduates to help them figure out there was something happening in their business. They have a business where they have been very proud of the fact that they build relationships and that they are all about personal service and trust, and they had a belief that you had to meet the person personally to be able to really win that client and make that happen. But obviously with COVID, people were booking to get a quote and someone to come to their house to do a quote, but then before they'd even get there, they'd actually cancel because they'd suddenly realized they didn't want someone coming to their house. Or their competitors would be calling so hardcore, also chasing for the same work, that they'd get pipped at the post because they would not give a quote unless they got to see the person. So obviously strategy happens in sales. Strategy happens at every level of your business. In the way I do it, the way I see it, there's business strategy, then there's brand strategy, then there's marketing communication strategy, sales strategy, ops strategy, including system strategy and tech strategy and team strategy, and finance and legal and risk and contingency strategies, all required for the health of a whole business. So we shifted his sales strategy for his business and his franchisees, and bang, they literally in the following 6 weeks, they won every single quote. In the peak of COVID, they won every single quote that came through their doors, which was incredibly important to that business being able to make it through that very tough time. Another client that we worked with had a typical bricks and mortar business, retail, and with all the restrictions, everything dropped significantly. And they were suddenly like, oh my God, what do we do? So we actually sat down and had a strategy session and came up with, well, actually, we need to go from one revenue stream, which is the other thing we talk about in Money in You and creating wealth, one revenue stream to 3. We came up with 3 revenue streams that they could absolutely immediately implement. One was online learning, one was online retail, and the other was their core business of retail. So fundamentally, out of COVID, that business is going to be so much stronger for what it went through based on that shift in strategy, It's incredibly important strategy, just so important. And the other thing I wanted to point to is that what we found, and I'm sure a lot of people here have found it, and I know we were guilty of it, is that you know, maybe some of us were in a little bit of cruise mode. Maybe there was some complacency that COVID kicked our little butts on and forced to change. You know, that business, for example, they had been looking at an online software system to take their particular sector, take their business online. And they knew that some of their bigger competitors had gone for it. And they thought, nah, you know what, we'll worry about it. We'll do it the next 12 months, 2 years, maybe we'll worry about it then. We don't want to spend that money right now. We'll do it later. And so it went into the do it later too hard basket. And then of course, COVID hit, and what did they need? Well, they needed an online retail solution. So that some of us have dealt with, and COVID has, as I said, pushed up, here's any complacency, here's now quickly, you have to deal with it right now. And so to do that, you need a really strong strategy. So I could go on and on and on with examples of the power of strategy. I did a session yesterday with a very large business in the fit out space, and we were working on one of their divisions. And when we did the exercise I'm about to take you through, they have a very, very clear plan to go from $2 million in joinery, one piece of their business, to $10 million in gross revenues per annum. And it's easy, it's simple, it's incredibly leveraged and clear based on the strategy that we chose, and they can do it in their own time. So at whatever pace they want to do it at, they can turn that tap on or off as they like. That power of the strategy is so incredibly important. So what determines your strategy? Well, here's the number one mistake I see people make around this, which is that they don't have a strategy. They don't have a strategy. They end up in what we call a past-present loop. So if you look at this diagram on the screen right now, one says the first P on the left stands for past, the P in the middle stands for present, and the F on the right stands for future. So what happens here is, where do most businesses look? When a business is thinking about growing, let's say they're thinking about the next 12 months. In any normal scenario, they're sitting down, they're doing their budgets for the next 12 months. Where do they go? What do they look at to make that decision? Just pop it in the chat if you think you have a view on that. So what do most businesses go? What do they look to? Where do they look to help figure out their plans, their future? Where do they go? Very good. Vincent says history. That's right. They go to their past. So they actually go, you know what? Last year we did X, Y, Z. I think based on that, I reckon we can grow by 5%, maybe 10% this year if we just do this, this, or this, right? So fundamentally then, they end up in what we call a past-present loop, where their past keeps showing up in their present. And there's no exponential growth there. There's only incremental growth that will happen. Small changes. It's why many SME business owners end up experiencing what I call Groundhog Day, where most years are similar to the other years. This coming year, other than something like COVID, but the following year is similar to the last year with just some small changes in this and this and this. But that's not typically, if you're really a growth oriented, like I'm a business growth strategist. If you want growth, then you don't want to do that. You absolutely do not want to do that. If you want growth, which pretty much everyone I've spoken to, even through COVID, is still committed to growth. They're still committed to increasing their revenues and their profits, their sales, doing better with their leads, all of that. So I'm assuming everybody here and everybody listening to this recording is committed to growth. So instead, what has to happen is we have to go to the future. So what we want to be is in a future present loop. We want to be on the loop on the right-hand side. So instead of a past present loop, we get more of the same, Groundhog Day. Instead, what we do is we go out to the future. So like I was saying before, you would go out to say 2030, and you'd say, okay, well, what do we want the business to deliver us in 2030? Because remember, a business, I was lucky enough in my early days, I was incredibly lucky with the people I got mentored by and got to work with. I got to work with Chris Newton and Paul Dunn of Results Corp. I got to work with Michael Gerber, Jay Abraham, and Kiyosaki, Blair Singer, Dominic Leone, just an incredible group of mentors. And Michael Gerber drummed into me, very, very clear, that a business is designed to give you more life. Please write that down if you haven't. A business is designed to give you more life. It's a vehicle that if you add enough value, should spit out profit. It should spit out lifestyle if you design it properly, and wealth creation. But for many business owners, it doesn't do that because they end up in the past present loop and they're in Groundhog Day. So instead, what we want to do is we want to go to, in 2030, say, or even 2025, what do we want this business to be delivering in terms of profit to the owners, in terms of lifestyle for those owners, in terms of impact and reach for the market you want to serve, the community you want to serve, and potentially even in terms of give back. You know, most people who know me know I'm a massive advocate for B1G1. If you haven't looked at that, hang on a minute, what's happened there? If you haven't looked at that, please have a look at that. I'll just pop it in the chat. And just mention 90 Degrees if you reach out to them. It's a massive thing. So it could be, what do you want the business to provide you in profit? What do you want the business to provide you in lifestyle? What impact and reach, what difference do you want to make to the community you serve? And then maybe there's a contribution piece, is what give back do you want to have, which we use and endorse B1G1 for that as a fantastic way to do that. So where do you want that? What do you want all that to look like? Because based on what you say, then determines what your revenue needs to be. What does your revenue need to be if you say that? And I'll talk more about that. So when you do that thinking and that work, you stop and think and you create, this is what I want it to look like, then where we come into what's called a future present loop. We're making decisions in the present based on the future we're creating, not based on the past. We're informed by the past, but we're not driven by the past. So we're basing our decisions in the present based on the future we're creating with information from our past and our current circumstances, but not driven by those. I'll say more about that in a second. So where we want to be is a future present loop. The other thing that affects your strategy is where you are in the cash flow quadrant, which was made famous by Robert Kiyosaki, Money New Graduate. It actually was created by someone else in the 50s, made famous by Robert beautifully in his Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. So where you are in the cash flow quadrant also impacts your strategy and the best strategy for you. So if you're an employee or self-employed, you're selling time for money. If you're a business owner, you have a system that produces an output called money, if you're doing it right. And as an investor, you might own shares in businesses, or you might own shares or property and pure investing. And those things are having money work for you. So where you are in the quadrant will determine what your initial strategies need to be. But again, with a long-term perspective, those can be very short-term actions on the way to achieving your long-term goal. But the number one thing, in determining your strategy is you. You matter. Now, I've been growing my own businesses or other people's businesses for the last 29 years. I have literally spent my life growing businesses. And one of the things I see all the time is that entrepreneurs and leaders, business owners, end up lost in the mix. They end up lost in the mix. So they are out there and they are serving their clients. They're serving their community. They're serving their team. They're serving their families. They're focused on lots of people and making sure lots of people are taken care of. That's most SME business owners and entrepreneurs I know. They're very service orientated, very driven to make a difference. And fundamentally what happens is their clients and their team end up becoming the priority. And often the entrepreneurs and the business owners get lost in that process. But I want to tell you, when it comes to strategy, you matter. You absolutely matter. What you want is actually, what sets your strategy. So what are your goals? What do you really want? Now, here's the other thing I find when I do my private strategy intensives with people, even when people come to Money and You, the 3.5-day live program, many people know what they don't want, but they haven't sat down and done the thinking about what they really do want. So a business, as I said, that Michael Gerber I was talking about before, a business is designed to give you more life. It's designed to be a vehicle to produce wealth, to add value to whomever you're serving, and to give you a lifestyle and the ability to contribute. So these items here in red, let's say that big X, the red X, is what is the profit you want out of this business by 2030 or 2025 or 2 years from now, whatever. Pick a number, pick a year, but let's say 2030, okay? So what is the output in profit that you want from the business? Profit is a scorecard. That's it. It's just a scorecard to say we won the game, we lost the game. Which one was it? So profit, what profit do you want out of it? So let's say you say, well, I want the business to punch out $1 million in profit for me and for my family. That's what I want. We go, great, awesome. Now, because of that, we know that your profit percentage is 20% or 30%, right? We know that. So then we know, okay, great. If you want $1 million out of this thing, then you've got a 30% profit percentage, which we could be able to make higher potentially, but let's leave it at 30 for now. Then we know we've got to do 3.3 million to achieve our $1 million in profit. Make sense? So then you say, well, great, but what about lifestyle? Well, I only want to work 3 days a week or 4 days a week. Excellent. Well, we need a general manager. Let's chuck 200 grand in on the revenue level, not on the, we don't mess with the magic number. I call the red box the magic number, by the way. We never mess with that. We add the 200 we need for the GM to the top. So now the business has to do 3.5 million to give us our $1 million profit and the lifestyle we want. And then there's impact and reach and contribution through things like B1, G1, as I said, also need to be discussed. But the whole point is, if that's what you want the business to output, that's what the revenue needs to be. How do we get the business to do that? What products and services do we offer? At what price? To whom? How many? What markets are we in? What markets aren't we in? All of that thinking needs to be done. And where are the leverage points? What I'm looking for when I do this work with people is, where are the leverage points? So you want to be looking for things like average client value over time, average transaction value, how many times people deal with you, your conversion rates must be tracked. Mostly people think they're 75 or 80%. They're not. You've got to track your conversion rate. You'll probably find it's more like 25 or 30%. Can you double 25 or 30%? Yes, you can. Can you double 80%? No, you can't. So there's so many opportunities and so many leverage points to be looked at as you do the figuring on how do we get to that? What's the fastest, easiest way for us to get to that? Where's the leverage? Again, we spend a lot of time at Money and You. There's a whole entire game on Friday night designed to have people get an experience of leverage and a full understanding of what that actually means versus what we think it means. So really what you want drives the strategy, because if I'm meeting with a business owner who says, look, I want $500,000, I want $500,000, I want a kind of a lifestyle business, maybe 50 clients, 25 clients, whatever it is, great. That's strategy. There's a strategy for that. Then if I meet with someone who says, no, I want to impact human health globally. I want a business that's going to do that. It's going to produce this much profit, and it's going to mean we need to be $1 billion business per annum. The strategies required for those two founders are completely different, because a business is designed to be your unique self-expression. What do you want this business to bring to the world? And then how are you going to do that in the fastest, best possible way that actually gives you some rewards for that risk and effort? So where you want to go, your goals, you fundamentally matter, because you are the source of what you want is the source of the strategy. So those two businesses examples I gave you, completely different strategies required, multiple sets of completely different strategies. So I call that the founder's energy that you bring, and that what do we want out of it? So really this is a critical point. And the other massive thing that you have to take on, in my view, and I've been doing this for so long, and I've seen it time and time and time again, if you continue to try to work forwards from your past, your current circumstances and constraints, you will be capped. You will be limited. You will not be able to think about possibility. You'll be just thinking about, how the heck do I get this handled? Where we want to be is coming in that future present loop, as I said. So we want to be up here. We want to be working backwards from the future you are creating versus forwards from your past, your current circumstances and constraints. And there are a lot of businesses out there right now with constraints. We have a live events business that can't run live events. It's pretty constraining. So, but we're very clear. And in fact, we're still forging on with our plans to grow to 100 cities. We're bringing on another city as we speak. So, but we would have been head down, bum up, just focused on what we had to handle if we didn't have that incredibly big future and working backwards from that every single day. So we want to work backwards from the future you're creating versus forwards from your past and current circumstances and constraints. Okay, so that's strategy. The next one is actions. but what actions? There's so many different actions we all need to be taking. And I think most people I talk to have worked harder during this COVID process than at any other time in their business histories. So there's been so many actions to take and so many shifts to make. So now number 3, the third key to thriving in turbulent times is action. So, but what actions? What are the right actions? Well, only you are going to be able to figure that out unless you're working with someone like me in strategy. But one of the mantras that I took on when I had a big, ginormous learning experience in post the GFC, and I lost everything. I had a very large business. It was very successful. We were funding, the business funded the nonprofit. It was all, going incredibly well until it wasn't. And lost everything through a series of mistakes around governance and various things that happened. And one of the mantras that my husband and I took on was the only way out is through. Those days where we wanted to do a dive and stay there. No, the only way out is through. Buckminster Fuller talks about left foot, right foot, right foot, just one foot in front of the other and correct as you go. So we took on the only way out is through. So if you're a business right now that's growing, like in fact, this whole process has had you grow, you'll be dealing with issues of systems and operations and team and having issues around that. The only way out is through. So you have to do the work to get through that. Those of you who've been shut down or those of you who are struggling, again, the only way out is through, but there is a pathway out, particularly if you keep the right perspective and you work on what is the strategy that's going to get us there fastest, and keep the mindset that the only way out is through. Left foot, right foot, one foot in front of the other, and keep going. Tony Robbins says the path to success is to take massive determined action. He's a Money New graduate and we completely agree with him. So what is the massive determined action you need to take right now that would make the biggest difference to you? A lot of times I find many business owners actually do know what they need to do. They just frightened to do it. So this is what Kiyosaki says, again, another Money New graduate. He says, hoping drains your energy, action creates energy. So I created at the very beginning of COVID, I created the top 10 tips for thriving in turbulent times. And I'm happy for Laurent, for you guys to make that public if you want to. But here's some of the ideas in there. I won't go into too much detail because we're going to run out of time. Oh, in fact, we may have just run out of time. But the top 10 are lead your family, lead your business, lead your life, lead. Another element of that is be on the front foot. Have those conversations you don't want to have. Take those difficult steps you don't want to take. Be on the front foot. Get out in front of this thing and out in front of what is coming. This is not what we've just gone through is the beginning. It is not in any way, shape or form ended. It is just the beginning. So be on the front foot from here out as well. And have those difficult conversations. Get the support you need. Talk to people as you need to. The other thing about leading, by the way, is I've been telling people, make sure that you're a positive light. Make sure you're a positive beacon for your clients, for your community. Be on Facebook saying something positive. Don't be on there saying anything else. Lead. Be on the front foot. Keep marketing. Never stop marketing. In the peak of COVID, Facebook was cheaper than it's been in 8 years. So keep marketing. Your audience needs you. Your market needs you. But make sure that it's value added. Lots of how-to. Lots of stuff that makes a difference versus selling. Actually do things that teach people something. Do something of value. Treat every lead as gold. Not telling you to suck eggs, but I had an experience where I was working with this electrical business, and he had all these warm referrals from builders, to other builders, and he hadn't called them because he was being all weirded out about where we find ourselves in the market. I'm like, no, you're going to get on the phone and call them, and then convert. To talk about converting, you want to do everything you can to add as much value at the moment in going forward in the next 12 months in particular as well. You want to add as much value as you can to your sales offering. So what can you offer that's a low dollar cost to you and a high perceived value? What can you bundle to make what you are doing, you being the choice, the no-brainer compared to others? Increased frequency of positive communication. At Money and You, we go through a whole session around the keys to cooperation. And one of the keys to cooperation is frequency of communication. What we've been talking to people about right now in terms of action is increase the frequency of positive communication. We put on 2 different live events for our community each week now. That was inside increasing the frequency of positive communication that makes a difference. As I said, be the light on the hill on Facebook, on social media, be talking to suppliers, be talking to creditors, be talking to team more often and very positively than perhaps you've ever done before. And look, that was true in the peak of COVID, but it's absolutely true in the next 12 months. This thing ain't over. This is going to get potentially worse before it gets better. So we need to keep that positive communication happening. Negotiate, create win-win solutions. Don't go it alone, get support. Obviously, you've got Laurent and David, and you've got people like myself, you've got the Money in You community, you're very welcome to participate in. Then look at structure and productivity. Your offering, got to be looking at your offering. Everyone's looking at our offering, etc. So, and the last one in terms of the top 10 tips is manage your mind. Be the gatekeeper of your mind, as in protect what goes in. I can only listen to about 5 minutes of US mainstream media, and I have to stop. My focus is get enough information so I'm informed, but keep your attention on where you can add the most value. Who can you add the most value to? Where can you add that value? And go do that. Go do that. Focus on that and manage your mind around doing that. Because I know whenever I was having a Chicken Little moment in this last 3 months, and whenever I go from that to focusing on others, new strategies come up, new ideas come up, new results show up. So I invite you to do that. Okay, well, that's about it. I think we're time for questions. So I will stop sharing my screen and feel free to go for it and ask some questions. I think Laurent's going to come back on. Excellent.
Yes, thank you so much, Ryll. I invite everyone to ask questions. There is a couple of questions, Ryll, that Michelle asked. If perspective is your long-term view, how do you use opportunity to readjust your deliverables?
Okay, great question. Hey, one thing for the chat. Can everyone pop in the chat for me? Which one matters the most to you, do you think? Which one will make the biggest difference to you? Perspective, strategy, or action? Pop it in the chat for me and let me know which one, perspective, strategy, or action. Which one is key for you right now, do you think? Which one will make the biggest difference right now? So to ask the question, if perspective is your long-term view, how do you use the opportunity to readjust your deliverables? So I think, what I'm saying is you want to create where you want to end up. Design the future. As Buckminster Fuller says, we're architects of the future. We're called to be architects of our future, not victims of it. So what is that future you're designing? And do the thinking to design that. And have that be the context for what you're doing in the short term. So in terms of, I don't know that you use it to readjust your deliverables, but any changes you make to your offering and to what you're delivering would be in the context of, is this forwarding my game to 2030? Is this adding value to the people who need it? Am I opening up other markets because of what I've adjusted? And if the answer is yes to all those things, then you would do that. I hope that makes sense. And then action, strategy, perspective, important. Don't think they can exist without each other. That's true.
Yeah.
Very good. What other questions do we have? Advice around the non-for-profit sector and reinvented?
Michelle asked as well, if you look at the future, if you focus on the future only.
I think he was saying when I was doing the future present loop.
Yes.
Yeah, we got that. Yeah. I think I handled that one. And then I think, Michelle, you've asked for advice around the non-for-profit sector and reinventing during this time. I actually have a private client that I work with that is a specialist in not-for-profits. But fundamentally, having had a non-for-profit, I created my non-profit called Step Up Foundation in 2002, and we ran it for a decade and grew it to 3 countries. And worked with just under 20,000 underprivileged and at-risk teenagers in that decade. My experience with not-for-profits is that you have to find a way, I think. Well, I can only give you my example. I'm not an expert in not-for-profits. I went in and created a not-for-profit not having had any experience. but my determination was I wanted my non-for-profit to be a demonstration of enterprise. So not-for-profits are designed, you have to have them produce profit. It's just that you don't pay them out in dividends. So it's a not-for-profit's a misnomer. So it's just that you're doing that enterprise not to create dividends for shareholders, but to add value to a community. But those two things are not mutually exclusive. So in my world, when I had my non-for-profit, I decided I wanted it to be a demonstration of enterprise. I did not want to rely on government grants and handouts. I wanted to find a way to add value to a market that would then let me add value to the kids I wanted to serve. So we ended up creating a strategy where adults would come and support the events we ran with the teams, but they would pay to be there because they would get to see all these incredible, our particular enterprise was live 2-day events or transformational. We'd have very high profile, famous entrepreneurs, Olympians, musicians speak. So we came up with a strategy to have adult corporate leaders and business owners actually pay to be there and pay to be there to support the kids and listen to those famous people. And it worked gangbusters. It was an amazing way that we funded ourselves to grow through 3 countries, and we didn't get a single grant, not one single grant in the whole entire decade, not for lack of trying, but we just didn't fit the right criteria. So for me, any not-for-profit needs to look at how and who can you add value to around your core business. And then also in not-for-profits, there's a lot of work to be done, in my experience, in efficiencies, in finance and operations, loads of efficiencies to be found there. And there's a great guy, client of mine. If you go to Cinch Financial Services, if you look them up, they are specialists in improving the financial health of not-for-profits and helping them grow. So hope that helps.
Thank you, Ryll. There is 3 questions that Pei put on the Q&A box. There is one first, based on what your own experience, what are the areas of opportunity for the next 12 months?
And then the next one is, what are 3 questions? Okay. It's good to see you here, PY. My business school buddy. What are the biggest opportunities for the next 12 months? I mean, look, and it actually question 1 and question 2 go together. So I think if you can look, Buckminster Fuller talks about if you see a job that needs doing, it's your job, right? It's a much longer quote than that, but fundamentally it means if you see a job that needs doing, it's your job. So if you see something that you think would make a difference to a particular market and you are drawn to that, it inspires you to participate in that, then that's what there is to do. That is the work to be done. That's the business to create. You need to do a lot of your own research on what are the opportunities for the next 12 months. I mean, there are opportunities in any kind of home delivery, any kind of home services, looking after the vulnerable. There's even been a creation of a luxury pandemic retreat. There are all sorts of, there are so many opportunities that are specific to this crazy world we find ourselves in. And because the world is shifting and the one thing I will say is people are often saying, oh, well, I can't wait for it to go back to normal. It ain't going back to normal. So what are the things that you can look at that are now the new normal that you could contribute to or make a difference with? So in terms of employees wanting to find a business, look for where you can make a difference, look for something that interests you, you're passionate about, and look for your current skills and how you can map those skills onto that and do that. That's what I would suggest. So basically, one law of business. Look, the one reason at Money and You, we talk about what is the true reason for being in business. The true reason for being in business is not profit. It is not revenues. It's not any of that. It is to add value. The purpose of being in business is to add value. So if you keep your eye on adding value, focus on adding more value to more people, any way you can, in any way you can. Look, we had to look at how can we add more value. We thought we were adding a fair bit of value, but then we went, well, shit, now we can add way more. Let's do this, let's do that, let's do this, to specifically ramp up the difference we could make with people during a tough time. And now ongoingly, we're going to continue all of that because it's made such a difference and it's really fun and people love it. So where can you add more value? The purpose of being in business is to add value. If you want to really pick one thing for the next 12 months, is just anytime I want to grow a business, I look at where could I add more value? Who could I add more value to? How could I add more value to them? Where can I add more value? That's fundamentally, if I want to grow a business, that's where I look first. So I suggest that's the place to start.
Great advisor, Real. And we're on the same page. The front cover, we're adding value, and it is the whole purpose of this New Economy Summit, to really add value and help entrepreneurs in startup and SMEs. So
yes. So I invite everyone to go and have a look at Money in You Australia. I know there are some graduates on here, I think. Australia.com.au, and come and we'll be doing we're actually going to be running our live events again later this year, September, October, November. We're very, very excited.
yes.
Normally we'd run 8 events. We've not been able to run any, so we're a bit desperate to see people and be in a room and cause the transformation that our program causes. So go and take a look and hopefully be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ryll. Well, one thing that came out of today's webinar was that there's a theme that's come from the last 2 webinars, and it was summed up in one of the quotes today, is be the architect for your future and not the victim. And yes, Monday's webinar and yesterday's webinar talked about visualizing the future and identifying it. And you've just reinforced that again today. And it's been very inspiring as always. And we thank you very much for your presentation. And this presentation will be on our website probably tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me, and thanks everybody. I hope it added some value.
Yes, definitely. Yes. And thank you so much, everyone. This morning, we'll send an email with all the detail of Ryll and the 10 tips, and as well the detail of Money and You and how you can connect with Money and You. So I wish you all a wonderful day, and I hope to see you tomorrow with Darrell Ardidge, with that he will explain client loyalty. That is a new gold standard in business. So I wish you all a wonderful day, and thank you so much for today.
Thanks, Laurent.
Thanks
for having me.
Bye.